All right, so today is August 22nd. It's a number of days after we lowered the boat down to the cradle. And I just wanted to talk about a few things since I never really talked about this. Since we lowered the boat, I mean, that was all just video of us working or the time lapse. So I wanted to talk about it just a little bit, what went on there and how it went. Obviously, it went pretty well. Can't say there was any real issues. The boat was nice and stable, and it's sitting exactly where it's supposed to be sitting now on the cradle, and the steel is under here as far as I'm going to put it for now. Now I had talked about going this piece of steel that needs to go up around the bow and up the bow. I talked about that was one of the next things I was going to do, but I got to thinking about that, and there really isn't any great reason we need to do that now. It's going to be kind of a difficult job to get that steel bent around the bow here. Yeah, you're pretty noisy there, aren't you? So what I got to thinking is, well, there's no reason we really need to do that now because this is going to be exposed. It's not like it's going to be underneath the framework or whatever. So why not wait with putting this steel on until we get it outside? And then I can even, put a couple bolts in down here, maybe even use my skid loader to help bend that steel, and then some come-alongs or whatever else we need. But once it's outside, it would be a lot easier to do this. And there's no particular reason we need to do it now. And it is this really hot spell. And as I promised, I'm not doing much. It's dew points of over 80 degrees. There it's saying 101, I guess. I don't think it's quite that yet, but they're talking 104 or 5 tomorrow with ridiculous humidity. It got down to 80 last night. 80 as a low overnight. And you can see I got some of that mold starting again. I probably should turn my fans back on again. So yeah, that's going to be a continuing struggle until that wood completely dries out with this this heat and humidity that we got going. And it looks like this one's getting a little surface mold on it now too. Well, anyway, so that's the situation there. When we were lowering the boat, and you probably, if you watched the videos, you saw how we were doing that. We had basically supports either at the back or at the front, and then the ones that we took loose, we had a person there holding them in position in case it started to tip a little bit. We could jam them under there. But what wound up happening was we did the back first, and so we jacked up the back, and the boat was literally being held up by these two on either side. And the interesting thing about that is, and later on it was held up by those two in the back. The back was held up by those two in the back. So the interesting thing about that is these posts here are resting on the hull, and it took the entire weight, 10,000 pounds or better. And this hull did not creak or moan or anything. There was absolutely no signs of any flexing or creaking or cracking or groaning or moaning anywhere. Now, where we did have a little bit of noise, and you maybe saw us in the video talking about that, there was a couple of pops that we heard from inside the boat. And if you watched the long video, you saw me talk about that in that video probably. I think what was happening was that steel, it's actually a T-beam, not an I-beam, but that track up there for my chain hoist was catching on the inside of the stem there, and it popped a couple times as it was coming loose, and we heard that, and it kind of surprised us, and we didn't know what it was, and then I suspected that's what it was, and then I went up the steps and took a look up there, and I could see that it had been rubbing on the inside of that. Now that needs to be trimmed off, and so it'll be a little shorter, and it didn't hurt anything, but it surprised us a little bit because that was a noise we weren't familiar with. If you heard some creaking or crunching, what that was as we were lowering the boat would be the bolt heads. hex bolt heads for the lag bolts that are holding those steel plates on as they sunk into the wood. And they did a really nice job of sinking into the wood. As you can see here on this piece, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 perfect bolt heads dented into that piece of wood. So that was interesting, but that's where you heard some crunching and stuff. That wasn't actually coming from the boat itself. So all in all, it went quite well. No real issues. Now, one thing I have been doing is back here, and if you've been watching this or watched these videos from way back when, you'll notice, remember that back here there was a dip in there, kind of a concave spot up there, and you can still almost see it a little bit. But now, I went up and worked on that this week, and I pulled the screws out of these 3 sets of frames here, and I brought it out just a little, brought that the top 3 planks out a little bit, so we didn't have that. And at its maximum, it's about 3/4 of an inch. So what I did was I put some wood shims in there, some plywood shims. I tapered them and put some shims in there, and then I filled that with thickened epoxy. Now this frame 46 is still second from the last. You know, there's the end, and then the first one, you know, next to the end there. It's too far out, and I fixed it on the other side. When I did the other side, I trimmed that down a little better. But I think George had them just a little bit too wide, you know, like maybe an inch on either side too wide. But you can see how this one here is much smoother, and it flows around a lot better. So this one here, I can't really do anything about this number 46 being out too far now. Now what I probably will do is I'll trim a little bit off out here, you know, maybe try to take a 1/4 inch off with the planer. I have to make sure I don't go deeper than what the screws are set there, but that's probably what I'll do. Take just a little bit off of there to smooth it out just a little more, to flatten it out just a little more. But this here now looks a lot better than it did. It still looks a little flat there, but I think that's more or less because this is high rather than this being low. So yeah, I got that done, and that makes me feel better that it looks at least somewhat better. And what I did to get the thickened epoxy in there is I used these tubes, these are empty caulking tubes, and I bought a box of these way back when, thinking that they'd come in handy somewhere, and they come with the piston. Yeah, they're down inside there in the box. The piston and the tips. And I'm almost wondering if a guy could reuse them, because after this stuff cured, there's the epoxy that was, the thickened epoxy that was left in the tube. But they were handy, and they worked really quite well, and I'm wondering if I might be able to actually reuse these. Get this stuff pulled out, and then maybe push the plunger back through with a rod or something. But yeah, even if they're not reusable, you know, they weren't that terribly expensive. And yeah, I'd never seen these before, and I came across them. I don't know where, but so I ordered a box of these. And like I said, even if you have to make them single use, that's all right. They weren't terribly expensive, but might actually be able to reuse them. So we shall see. But yeah, and I've been doing a little bit of, you can see the sawdust down here. Been doing a little bit of planing here. I got to finish out that chine point to the end, and then at some point when we get we'll have to move the stairs away from here so I can finish out this 6 or 7 feet here. But I have been working on that. So, but other than that, I haven't been doing a whole lot. Don't anticipate doing a lot for the rest of this week because of the heat and the humidity. Yeah, I think I'll get a fan set up in here and try to continue drying out this. Yeah, get the mold off here again. All right, that'll be my update.